The nightmares had returned to haunt Admiral Thora Voss for the third consecutive night. Each time, the same vision. Ancient stone monuments on a forgotten world, their surfaces etched with warnings in languages long dead, and a darkness spreading across the stars like spilled ink. She woke in her quarters aboard the Galactic Alliance flagship Tempest with sweat beading on her forehead, the ship's ambient hum a poor distraction from the lingering dread. "Lights 30%, she commanded, swinging her legs over the edge of her bed. The room illuminated softly, revealing the sparse decorations of a woman who lived her life among the stars rather than on any single world. At 53, Thora had served the Alliance for 30 years, earning respect through strategic brilliance and unwavering integrity. Her silver-streaked black hair was cut in a practical style that framed sharp features and eyes that had witnessed 3 interstellar conflicts. The communication panel chimed. "Admiral," came the voice of her first officer, "Prophet Kresh has arrived. He's quite insistent about seeing you immediately." Thora frowned. The prophets of Vaisara were respected throughout the galaxy for their precognitive abilities, but they rarely left their sanctuary world. For one to request an audience at this hour suggested trouble beyond her dreams. "Send him to my ready room. I'll be there shortly." 20 minutes later, Thora stood face to face with Jalen Kresh, his tall, willowy frame draped in robes of deep purple that contrasted with skin the color of burnished copper. The intricate silver circuitry embedded in his temples, neural enhancements that amplified his natural abilities, pulsed with soft light. "The visions have found you too," he stated rather than asked, his voice carrying the melodic cadence typical of Vassarans. Thora's jaw tightened. "I don't discuss my dreams, Prophet." "These are not mere dreams, Admiral." Jalen's iridescent eyes, another Vassaran trait fixed on hers. "They are echoes from the past, warning of a future that approaches like a storm." He placed a data crystal on her desk. 17 prophets across the galaxy have experienced identical visions in the past month. The statistical probability of coincidence is negligible. Thora finished, military discipline warring with growing unease. "What exactly are we looking at?" "An awakening." Jalen activated the crystal, projecting a holographic star map. Several systems pulsed with red light. These worlds all contain ruins from the predecessor civilization, monuments that have stood silent for 50,000 years. Now they're emitting energy signatures we cannot explain. The predecessors, a mysterious species that had dominated the galaxy long before humanity's first steps into space. Their ruins dotted hundreds of worlds, but their fate remained the greatest archaeological mystery in recorded history. "The Alliance Science Division has studied these ruins for centuries," Thora pointed out. "Their dormant technology, nothing more." Until now, Jalen's fingers manipulated the hologram, zooming in on one particular system, Navaris, a frontier world at the edge of Alliance space. 3 days ago, a research team on Navaris discovered this. The hologram shifted to display footage from what appeared to be an underground chamber. Massive stone columns surrounded a central dais upon which sat a crystalline structure resembling a pyramid. It pulsed with blue-white energy, casting eerie shadows across ancient walls covered in symbols. "The symbols match those from your dreams," Jalen said quietly. Thora felt a chill run through her body. "How could you possibly know what symbols were in my?" "Because they're in all our visions." The same warning repeated across time and space. Jalen's expression darkened. The research team managed to partially translate the inscriptions before they lost contact with Alliance Command. "Lost contact?" Thora straightened, military instincts immediately alert. "No distress call, no communication for 72 hours. Jalen's voice dropped lower. "But the partial translation they sent is troubling. It speaks of the Covenant, apparently not a peace agreement but a species, a predatory hive-mind entity that the predecessors fought and ultimately lost to." Thora studied the footage with growing concern. "You believe these monuments are warning systems, that they're activating because this Covenant is returning?" "I believe, Admiral, that the greatest threat the galaxy has ever faced was merely dormant, not defeated." Jalen's expression was grave. "And something has disturbed its slumber." The communication panel chimed again, this time more urgently. Thora tapped it. "Voss here." "Admiral," her tactical officer's voice was tense. "Long-range sensors have detected multiple anomalies at the edge of the Navaris system. Energy signatures unlike anything in our database." Thora's eyes met Jalen's. "Battle stations, alert all ships in the sector." She paused, the weight of the moment pressing down on her shoulders. "And contact the Alliance Council, Priority Omega." As alarms began to sound throughout the ship, Thora turned back to the holographic display, watching as new anomalies began appearing across the map, spreading outward from Navaris like a viral infection. "They've been waiting," Jalen whispered, "for 50,000 years. Waiting for us to reach a certain point in our development." Wise Thora demanded. The final transmission from the research team contained one more translated phrase. Jalen's voice was barely audible over the rising commotion outside. They feed on potential. The Tempest shuddered as it prepared to jump to lightspeed, but Thora Voss stood motionless, haunted by the certainty that she was about to lead her people into the darkness that had plagued her dreams, a darkness that had consumed an entire civilization before them. The ancient visions had warned of the last battle, and now the galaxy would finally see the truth that had been hidden in plain sight for millennia. The automated mining facility on Helios Prime wasn't designed for stealth operations, but Captain Naira Devereaux hadn't earned her reputation by following standard protocols. Her vessel, the Phantom Stride, a decommissioned Alliance corvette she'd modified for independent operations, hovered in the shadow of a massive ore extraction platform, its stealth systems masking its presence from both the facility's rudimentary sensors and the Alliance patrol ships that occasionally swept through the system. How much longer, Orion? Naira's voice carried the clipped precision of someone accustomed to military discipline despite having left the Alliance Navy 5 years ago. At 36, her features reflected her mixed heritage, angular face framed by copperhead hair tied back in a practical braid, skin bearing the distinctive bronze undertones of someone born on the desert world of Solera. Dr. Orion Malik didn't look up from his console, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces as he bypassed the facility's security protocols. Unlike Naira, the scientist had never served in any military. His expertise had been honed in the prestigious Galactic Institute of Archaeology before he'd been quietly dismissed for theories deemed dangerously speculative by his peers. Almost there, he murmured, dark eyes reflecting scrolling data. The facility's archives should contain the unredacted surveys from the initial colonization. If I'm right, they found predecessor artifacts here too, but the data was classified. Naira checked her wrist display, where a countdown timer steadily decreased. We have 18 minutes before the next automated security sweep. Make it count. There, Orion's voice rose with excitement. I'm in, downloading now. The screen before them flooded with information. Geological surveys, mining reports, and then precisely what they were looking for. Classified archaeological findings from 30 years ago when Helios Prime was first being assessed for colonization. They found a chamber, Orion whispered, eyes widening as he scanned the data. Similar to the one on Navaris, but they sealed it, deemed it a potential hazard to colonial development. He pointed to coordinates on the display. It's less than 5 kilometers from here, buried beneath an inactive mining quadrant. Naira's expression hardened. The Alliance is suppressing information about these sites. Why? Look at this. Orion pulled up an encrypted communication dated just 3 days earlier. Direct order from Admiral Renfield of Alliance High Command. All personnel are to avoid Sector 7B archaeological team inbound with special clearance. That's where the chamber is located, Naira noted. They're mobilizing after what happened on Navaris. The ship's AI interrupted them. Captain, I've detected increased communication traffic from Alliance channels. Multiple vessels have changed course and are converging on this system. Naira's decision was immediate. We need to see that chamber before they lock it down, prepare for atmospheric descent. 90 minutes later, they stood at the entrance to what appeared to be a natural cave system, though the precision of the tunnel leading downward suggested artificial modification. Naira's hand rested on her pulse pistol as they advanced, helmet lamps illuminating the passage. The energy readings are spiking, Orion reported, studying his scanner. Similar patterns to what was reported on Navaris before communications went dark. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern that stole their breath away. Massive columns carved from the native bedrock rose to a ceiling 30 meters high. Between them stood monolithic structures of an unknown black material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. At the center, just as the reports had described, sat a crystalline pyramid. But unlike the active one from Navaris, this one remained dormant, its surface dull and lifeless. It's identical to the Navaris site, Orion whispered, approaching the pyramid with reverence. But it hasn't been activated yet. What triggered the one on Navaris? Naira asked, scanning the perimeter with practiced vigilance. According to the fragments of data I accessed, the research team was attempting to interface with it using technology derived from predecessor artifacts discovered on other worlds. Orion carefully circled the pyramid, his scanner recording every detail. The Alliance has been collecting these artifacts for decades, studying them in secret. Playing with fire, Naira muttered. What did they expect would happen? Orion stopped suddenly, pointing to inscriptions along the base of the pyramid. These glyphs, I've seen them before in the archive on Centauri IV, they're a warning. His voice took on a haunted quality. The predecessors weren't just an advanced civilization that mysteriously vanished. They were guardians, sentinels protecting the galaxy from something they called. The Covenant, came a voice from behind them. Naira whirled, weapon drawn, to find herself facing a tall figure in the distinctive purple robes of a Vassaran prophet. Behind him stood several Alliance soldiers, weapons trained on them. Prophet Jalen Kresh, the newcomer, introduced himself with a slight bow. And you must be Captain Devereaux and Dr. Malik. Your reputation precedes you both. How did you find us? Naira demanded, not lowering her weapon despite being outnumbered. The same way you found this place, Jalen replied calmly, by following the echoes of truth through a sea of lies. He gestured to the soldiers to lower their weapons. We're not here to arrest you. In fact, Admiral Voss sent me specifically to find you. Thora Voss, Naira's surprise was evident, the Alliance flagship commander. The same, Jalen confirmed. She remembers your skills from before you departed from Alliance service. And right now, she needs everyone who can see the truth of what we're facing. Which is what exactly? Orion asked, his scientific curiosity overriding caution. Jalen's expression darkened. The Navarus site is just the beginning. Something was awakened there, something that has already consumed an entire research team and 2 Alliance vessels sent to investigate. He turned toward the dormant pyramid. These structures aren't just warnings, they're keys to ancient weapons systems built by the predecessors. The Alliance has been attempting to activate them, believing they would provide technological advantages. Instead, they woke something up, Naira concluded. Precisely, Jalen stepped closer to the pyramid. The Covenant isn't a single entity, it's a collective consciousness that exists partially in our dimension and partially in another. The predecessors fought them for centuries before developing these weapon systems as a last resort, but the cost was devastating. What cost? Orion asked. Their entire civilization, Jalen replied solemnly. The weapons worked, but they required tremendous energy drawn directly from the predecessors themselves. Their sacrifice drove the Covenant back into dormancy, sealed behind dimensional barriers that have held for 50,000 years. A soldier approached, whispering urgently to Jalen. The prophet's expression grew grave. We've received word from the Tempest, he announced. 3 more sites have activated spontaneously. Whatever was awakened on Navarus is spreading, reaching out across the galaxy. He fixed his gaze on Naira and Orion. Admiral Voss is assembling a team of those who understand the true nature of the threat. Your knowledge of predecessor archaeology makes you invaluable, Dr. Malik. And your skills as an unconventional tactician, Captain Devereaux, may provide insights our military minds lack. Naira holstered her weapon, decision made. I left the Alliance because they were hiding too many truths. If they're finally ready to face reality, I'm in. As am I, Orion added, though I suspect we've only glimpsed the shadow of what awaits us. As they prepared to depart, the dormant pyramid briefly pulsed with a faint inner light before fading again to darkness, a silent confirmation that the ancient warnings were becoming reality, and the galaxy stood on the precipice of a conflict generations in the making. The outer rim outpost of Nova Haven had long served as neutral ground for those who existed on the fringes of Alliance space. Its central marketplace, a sprawling maze of stalls beneath a transparent dome that revealed the swirling green and purple nebula above, teemed with life forms from across the galaxy. Here, information flowed as freely as the synthetic liquor served in the countless establishments lining the market's perimeter. Soren Vex moved through the crowd with practiced ease, his weathered face partially obscured by a hood that cast shadows across features hardened by years of resistance against Alliance overreach. At 42, the leader of the Sentinel Collective, a network of rebels, whistleblowers, and disenfranchised colonists, had spent half his life fighting what he considered the Alliance's path toward authoritarian control. His augmented left eye, a necessity after losing the original during an Alliance pacification campaign on his home world, scanned the marketplace, its crimson glow barely visible beneath the hood. The cybernetic implant detected the subtle nanite signatures used by Alliance intelligence operatives, allowing him to identify 3 agents amid the crowd. Their presence wasn't surprising. Nova Haven always attracted those seeking to monitor the unmonitored. Soren slipped into the establishment known as the Cosmic Drift, its entrance marked only by a faded holographic sigil. Inside, the lighting was dim, the clientele diverse but universally discreet. He made his way to a private alcove at the rear, where a solitary figure awaited. Ambassador Layla Zarin didn't look up from her datapad as Soren slid into the seat across from her. At 38, she remained one of the most respected diplomatic envoys in the Alliance, publicly at least. Few knew of her clandestine communications with Soren's network over the past 2 years. 3 Alliance intelligence operatives followed you, she noted without preamble, her voice carrying the refined accent of someone educated on the core worlds. Her dark hair was pulled back in an elegant knot, emphasizing sharp features and eyes that revealed nothing of her thoughts. They always do, Soren replied with a shrug. But they won't enter, too many witnesses with too many reasons to dislike Alliance presence. He leaned forward. Your message said it was urgent. Layla finally looked up, her expression grave. Have you heard about Navaris? Rumors, an Alliance research facility went dark. Official channels claim it was a containment breach in their xenobiology lab. It wasn't, Layla slid her datapad across the table. This is classified at the highest level. I risked everything to access it. Soren reviewed the information, his cybernetic eye capturing and analyzing the data simultaneously. Predecessor technology, the Alliance has been studying these ruins for centuries. Not studying, Layla corrected. Weaponizing. The Hegemony Initiative was established 80 years ago, a classified project dedicated to reverse engineering predecessor technology for military applications. Soren's expression darkened. The Alliance Senate has no knowledge of this. A select few do, the rest are kept in the dark, believing the funding goes to peaceful exploration and archaeological preservation. Layla's voice dropped lower. But Navaris was different. They found something there, a complete predecessor weapons system. Initial analysis suggested it could generate energy unlike anything we've ever harnessed. And they tried to activate it, Soren concluded. They succeeded. Layla's hands trembled slightly. But what emerged wasn't what they expected. The transmission logs describe it as a tear in reality. Something came through. She paused. The final communication from the research team's leader, Director Hammond, contained just 3 words. We woke them. Soren sat back, processing the implications, and now Alliance High Command is scrambling. Admiral Voss has been dispatched with the 7th Fleet to establish a quarantine zone around Navaris, but reports indicate similar phenomena have begun occurring at other predecessor sites throughout Alliance space. Layla reclaimed her datapad. They're calling it a containment situation, but privately the Admiralty is using terms like extinction-level threat. The public deserves to know, Soren insisted. That's why I contacted you. Layla met his gaze directly. But there's more. The Hegemony Initiative wasn't acting alone, they've been collaborating with the Directorate. The revelation hit Soren like a physical blow. The Directorate, a shadowy coalition of corporations and private military contractors that wielded influence throughout the galaxy, had been a target of his investigations for years. Their connection to various colonial suppressions was suspected but never proven. Evidence, he asked sharply. Director Hammond was on their payroll, so were half the researchers at Navaris. Layla pulled up additional files. The Alliance provided the access and resources. The Directorate provided additional funding and specialized personnel. Together, they've been experimenting with predecessor technology across dozens of sites. To what end? Control, Layla's expression hardened. Whoever masters predecessor technology controls the future of interstellar civilization. The Directorate believes they can harness whatever force was unleashed on Navaris. They're fools, Soren growled. If these ruins were left dormant for 50,000 years, there was a reason. Their conversation was interrupted as Soren's communicator vibrated with an encrypted alert. He checked it, his features tightening. One of my operatives on the Alliance battlecruiser Tempest just made contact, he explained. Admiral Voss has assembled a special task force, scientists, military specialists, even a Vassarin prophet. They're planning to activate another predecessor site on Helios Prime. That's madness, Layla whispered, after what happened on Navaris. According to my source, they believe it's the only way to fight what's been unleashed. The predecessor sites aren't just weapons, they're part of an interconnected defense system spread across the galaxy. Soren stood abruptly. I need to get to Helios Prime. Layla rose as well. I'll come with you. My diplomatic credentials can get us past Alliance blockades. You'd be burning your cover, Soren warned. The moment you're seen with me, your career is over. My career is irrelevant if civilization as we know it is at risk. Layla's determination was evident. Besides, I have contacts in the Senate who need to know what's happening. If we can provide concrete evidence of the Directorate's involvement and the true nature of the threat, we might be able to force Alliance High Command to change their approach. As they prepared to leave, a commotion erupted near the entrance. The establishment's patrons scattered as 3 figures in unmarked combat gear entered, scanning the room with purpose. Directorate operatives, Soren muttered, recognizing their tactical positioning. Not Alliance. They followed me, Layla realized with horror. They must have detected my access to the classified files. Soren activated his cybernetic implants, tactical overlays providing escape routes and threat assessments. There's a maintenance corridor behind the bar. It leads to the lower levels and the spaceport. They moved quickly but not quickly enough. One of the operatives spotted them, shouting commands to his companions. The sound of weapons powering up echoed through the now emptying establishment. "Run," Soren urged, pulling Layla toward the bar. "I'll hold them off." "You'll do no such thing," came a new voice as a hooded figure stepped from the shadows, positioning herself between them and the approaching operatives. The newcomer pulled back her hood to reveal striking features and determined eyes. "Captain Naira Devereaux," she introduced herself briefly. "Admiral Voss sent me to find you both." Before Soren could respond, Naira activated something on her wrist. A cascading wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed outward, temporarily disabling the Directorate operatives' weapons and communications. "My ship is docked at Bay 17, she informed them, already moving toward the exit. "I suggest we hurry, that pulse won't keep them down for long." "Why would Admiral Voss send someone to find us?" Soren demanded, even as they followed her. "Because the situation is worse than anyone realized," Naira replied grimly. "The Covenant isn't just awakening, it's been manipulated into awakening by someone within Alliance High Command who's working with the Directorate. They thought they could control it, use it as leverage." "Instead?" Layla asked. "Instead," Naira said as they rushed through the maintenance corridor, "they've initiated what the predecessors called the final recursion, a galactic extinction event that has happened before and will happen again unless we can stop it." As they emerged into the chaotic spaceport, alarms blaring as news of incidents across Alliance space reached even this distant outpost, the three unlikely allies raced toward what might be their only chance to unveil the truth behind the ancient warnings, and perhaps the galaxy's only hope for survival against those who had architected their own destruction through deception and unchecked ambition. The Alliance flagship Tempest hung in orbit above Helios Prime, its massive silhouette dwarfed by the armada that had assembled over the past 72 hours. Through the command deck's panoramic viewport, Admiral Thora Voss observed the gathering of vessels, not just Alliance warships but craft from independent systems, mercenary fleets, and even the reclusive Vassaran spiritual vessels, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight in prismatic patterns. "The largest unified fleet in galactic history," commented Dr. Orion Malik, who stood beside her at the tactical display. "And still potentially insufficient." Thora's expression remained stoic, though the weight of command had carved new lines into her face since the Navarus incident. "The Covenant has already consumed 3 systems, over 8 billion lives lost." She turned as the command deck doors slid open. "Our guests have arrived." Captain Naira Devereaux entered, flanked by Soren Vex and Ambassador Layla Zarin. The tension on the bridge was palpable. Soren's reputation as a rebel leader had preceded him, and several officers visibly stiffened at his presence. Admiral Naira acknowledged with a crisp nod, as requested. Thora approached the newcomers. "Thank you for coming. Circumstances have forced unlikely alliances." She addressed Soren directly. "Your network has provided valuable intelligence over the years, even if our goals often diverged." "Our goals never diverged, Admiral," Soren replied coolly. "Only our methods and our willingness to acknowledge corruption within the system." "A point now painfully validated," Thora conceded, surprising many of her officers. She gestured toward the tactical display. "Please join us, time is critical." The holographic display showed the current known spread of what they now understood to be the Covenant, a quantum consciousness that existed across multiple dimensions, manifesting in our reality as a consuming darkness that transformed matter and energy into extensions of itself. Already, 3 star systems had been completely overtaken, their planets, populations, and even the fabric of space itself absorbed and transformed. The Directorate believed they could control the Covenant, Prophet Jalen Kresh explained, joining them at the display. They discovered that the predecessor ruins contained not warnings, but communications devices, terminals designed to maintain contact with the entity on the other side of the dimensional barrier. "Why would the predecessors maintain communication with something that destroyed them?" Layla asked. "Because destruction wasn't the Covenant's original purpose," Orion interjected. "Based on the translations I've completed from multiple sites, the Covenant was a creation of the predecessors themselves, an attempt to transcend physical limitations by creating a collective consciousness that could exist beyond the constraints of our dimension." "They created their own destroyer," Naira observed grimly. "They created something that evolved beyond their control," Orion corrected. "The Covenant began consuming its creators, converting them into extensions of itself, not out of malice, but because its primary directive was integration and expansion." Soren studied the spreading darkness on the display, and now it's awakened again with the same imperative. "Not exactly the same," came a new voice. Admiral Renfield entered the command deck, his Alliance uniform immaculate but his expression haggard from days without sleep. As the head of Alliance Special Projects, his involvement with the Directorate had been revealed in the data Layla had obtained. Thora's hand moved subtly toward her sidearm. Admiral Renfield, I didn't recall inviting you to this briefing. You didn't, he acknowledged, hands raised slightly to show he was unarmed. But considering my role in this catastrophe, I believed you deserved to hear the truth directly from me. The truth, Soren stepped forward aggressively, only stopped by Naira's restraining hand on his arm. 8 billion dead because of your experimentation, because you and the Directorate thought you could weaponize something you didn't understand. We understood more than you realize, Renfield countered wearily. The Directorate discovered something the Alliance had missed in centuries of studying predecessor ruins, the integration mechanism. The Covenant doesn't just consume, it preserves consciousness within its collective. The predecessors aren't extinct, they're assimilated. A stunned silence followed this revelation. You awoke it deliberately, Jalen finally said, his Vassarin eyes reflecting comprehension and horror in equal measure. Not to control it, but to join it. To transcend, Renfield corrected. The Directorate believed evolution's next step was to merge with the Covenant, to guide its development from within rather than resist it from without. Madness, Thora whispered. Vision, Renfield insisted. But we miscalculated. The Directorate representatives who underwent voluntary integration, they were changed in ways we hadn't anticipated. The messages they sent back were distorted, and then Navarus fell completely silent. Until the darkness began to spread, Layla noted. Renfield nodded. We believed we were in control of the awakening process. We were wrong. That's putting it mildly, Soren growled. Orion had been studying the tactical display intently during this exchange. The pattern of expansion isn't random, he observed. The Covenant is targeting predecessor sites first, activating them to create additional integration nodes. He pointed to a system that pulsed with warning indicators. Valor Prime is next, the largest known concentration of predecessor technology in the galaxy. If Valor Prime falls, the expansion will accelerate exponentially, Jalen warned. The entire galaxy could be consumed within weeks. Thora turned to Renfield. You awakened this thing, how do we stop it? That's why I'm here, Renfield replied. The Directorate recovered fragments of the original predecessor defense protocol, the one they used to force the Covenant back into dormancy 50,000 years ago. It requires simultaneously activating all remaining dormant predecessor sites, creating a resonance field that would seal the dimensional barriers. At what cost? Jalen asked sharply. The historical records suggest the predecessors sacrificed themselves to power such a field. The cost would be significant, Renfield admitted. Massive energy requirements beyond what our current technology can generate. Naira's eyes narrowed. You're talking about sacrificing inhabited worlds to power this defense. I'm talking about saving the galaxy, Renfield countered. Some systems would be lost, yes, but the alternative is losing everything. The command deck fell silent as the implications settled over the assembled group. It was Thora who finally broke the silence. There must be another way, she insisted, turning to Orion and Jalen. Between your archaeological knowledge and the Vassarin prophecies, there has to be an alternative. Orion hesitated, exchanging glances with Jalen. There, might be. The translations mention a nexus key, a central control mechanism the predecessors created as a failsafe. If it still exists, it could allow for more precise control of the resonance field, potentially minimizing casualties. Where is this key? Thora demanded. Unknown, Jalen admitted. The references are fragmentary at best. Layla, who had been quietly analyzing data on her personal device, looked up suddenly. I may have something. The diplomatic archives contain records dating back to the earliest Alliance explorations. There's mention of a world of light where the predecessors bound the darkness. She displayed the ancient text. Coordinates were considered mythological until recent predecessor site discoveries confirmed their accuracy system. Orion studied the coordinates. That's in the Cerulean Void, a region of space considered impassable due to intense radiation and gravitational distortions. It's also directly in the Covenant's expansion path, Soren noted. If the key exists, we have days at most to reach it before the darkness does. Thora made her decision. Admiral Renfield, you will provide all Directorate data on the predecessor defense protocols to Dr. Malik. Your cooperation might partially atone for your actions. She turned to the others. Captain Devereaux, your ship is the fastest and most adaptable in our fleet. You'll take a team to these coordinates, find this nexus key if it exists. Who's on the team? Naira asked. Dr. Malik for his archaeological expertise, Prophet Kresh for his precognitive abilities, and, she hesitated briefly, Soren Vex for his unconventional thinking. Soren raised an eyebrow, and you trust me not to sabotage the mission. I trust you to survive, Thora replied bluntly. Your record speaks for itself. Ambassador Zarin will remain here to coordinate with the Allied fleet and prepare the remaining systems for possible evacuation. Layla nodded grimly. The Senate needs to know the full truth. I'll make sure they hear it. What will the Tempest be doing? Naira asked. Thora's expression hardened. We'll be leading the defense at Valor Prime. If we can delay the Covenant's advance, it might buy you the time you need. A suicide mission, Jalen observed quietly. A necessary stand, Thora corrected. Now go, the galaxy's running out of time. 48 hours later, the Phantom Stride emerged from its final jump into a region of space unlike any they had ever encountered. The cerulean void lived up to its name, a vast expanse where normal space appeared to fracture and fragment, creating prismatic refractions that bathed the ship in eerie blue light. Sensors are barely functioning, Naira reported from the pilot's seat. Gravitational anomalies everywhere. Orion studied the readings with fascination. These aren't natural formations. The entire region has been artificially modified at the quantum level. In the co-pilot seat, Jalen closed his eyes, his neural enhancements pulsing. I sense consciousness here, ancient, fragmented, but persistent. The predecessors, Soren asked from his station at Tactical. Something preserved, Jalen replied distantly. A memory encoded into the fabric of space itself. Orion pointed ahead. There, that structure, it's consistent with predecessor architecture, but the scale is. Words failed him as they approached what could only be described as a city floating in space. Massive interlocking structures of the same crystalline material seen in the predecessor ruins, but intact and pulsing with interior light. At its center hovered a perfect sphere that seemed to both absorb and emit energy simultaneously. The Nexus, Jalen whispered in awe. Their communication system crackled suddenly to life. Phantom Stride, this is Admiral Voss. If you're receiving, the situation has deteriorated. Valor Prime has fallen. The Covenant's advance has accelerated beyond our models. We've lost contact with 17 systems in the past hour. Naira opened a channel. Admiral, we've located the Nexus, preparing to dock and investigate. Hurry, came Thora's voice, distorted by interference. Our fleet is, static interrupted before she continued. Falling back to the Archon line, we can't hold much longer. As the transmission faded, the four companions exchanged grim looks. Let's move, Naira ordered, guiding the ship toward what appeared to be a docking structure. Inside the predecessor facility, they discovered corridors that shifted and reconfigured as they walked, responding to their presence in ways that defied conventional physics. Holographic interfaces sprang to life around them, displaying symbols that Orion frantically worked to translate. It's a control center, he explained as they reached a vast chamber at the heart of the structure. The Nexus key isn't an object, it's this entire installation. The predecessors created it as a means to communicate with and potentially control the Covenant. Then why didn't they use it to save themselves? Soren asked. Jalen, who had been in a trance-like state since they entered, suddenly spoke. Because activation requires what they lacked, unity of purpose. His eyes opened, now glowing with the same blue energy that suffused the installation. The Covenant was created from the collective consciousness of countless predecessors. It can only be directed by a similarly unified will. Meaning what exactly? Naira demanded. Meaning someone must interface directly with the Nexus, Orion realized, pointing to a platform at the center of the chamber. Become a conduit between our reality and the Covenant's dimension. A suicide mission, Soren echoed Jalen's earlier assessment. No, Jalen corrected. A transformation. Whoever interfaces becomes part of the Nexus permanently, neither fully human nor fully transcended. A sudden tremor shook the installation. Through the chamber's transparent ceiling, they could see darkness spreading across the stars. The Covenant's advance had reached the cerulean void. We're out of time, Naira said grimly. How do we activate it? Orion worked frantically at the holographic controls. I've deciphered the sequence, but the energy requirements are enormous. Our ship's reactor could provide enough power, but it would mean sacrificing our only way out, Soren finished. Do it. As Orion initiated the power transfer, the platform at the chamber's center began to glow, awaiting its interfacer. It should be me, Jalen said quietly. The Vassarin neural enhancements make me the most compatible. No, Naira countered, your people need you, I'll do it. Soren stepped forward. You're both wrong, it has to be me. The others turned to him in surprise as he continued. My cybernetic implants were derived from predecessor technology, scavenged from ruins by rebels who couldn't access Alliance medical facilities. I'm already partially integrated with their systems. Before anyone could object, Soren moved onto the platform. Tell Layla that sometimes the truth isn't enough, sometimes you have to become the change you're fighting for. The platform activated, energy coursing upward around Soren's form. His cybernetic eye blazed with blue fire that spread across his features as the integration began. Through the pain, he maintained focus, directing his consciousness toward a single imperative, not destruction but containment, not conquest but coexistence. Above them, the darkness that had been consuming stars faltered, then began to recede. Across the galaxy, the Covenant's advance halted as a new consciousness, human yet expanded, asserted control over the ancient entity. Orion watched in awe as the holographic displays showed the darkness reforming, transforming from a consuming void into a networked presence that illuminated rather than devoured. He's redirecting it, Jalen whispered, changing its fundamental nature. On the platform, Soren's physical form had begun to dissolve, merging with the energy field as his consciousness expanded outward. His voice, when it came, seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. I see now what the predecessors intended, he said, his voice overlaid with harmonics that hadn't been there before. Not control or destruction, but synthesis. A new form of existence where consciousness transcends physical limitations without sacrificing individuality. Soren, Naira called uncertainly. Still here, Captain, came the reply, a hint of his old wry humor remaining. Just expanded. The Covenant was never meant to consume, but to preserve. The Directorate's interference corrupted its purpose, but I've restored the original directive. Through the viewports, they watched as the darkness throughout the void transformed into networks of luminous energy, beautiful rather than terrifying. What happens now? Orion asked. Now we rebuild, Soren replied. The worlds that were consumed aren't gone, they're transformed. With time, I can help restore them, return their populations to physical form if they choose, or they can remain part of the collective, exploring existence beyond conventional reality. And you, Jalen asked softly. A pause. I remain as guardian and guide. The interface is permanent but not unpleasant. I've found peace here, something I never expected. Their communication system activated suddenly. Phantom Stride, do you copy? Thora's voice broke through, clearer now. The Covenant is retreating across all fronts. What's happening? Naira glanced at Soren's dissolving form, now more energy than matter. We found the Nexus, Admiral, and someone brave enough to use it. As they prepared to return to what remained of Alliance space, to rebuild a civilization forever changed by the encounter with its ancient past, Naira, Orion, and Jalen understood that the ancient visions had been both warning and invitation. The galaxy had finally seen the truth, that evolution sometimes required sacrifice, that transformation often came through fire, and that the greatest threats could, with courage and vision, become the greatest opportunities for transcendence. In the heart of the Nexus, Soren Vex, rebel, skeptic, and now something far greater, spread his consciousness across the stars, a guardian born from the very forces he had once fought against. The last battle had not been fought with weapons, but with will, and in its aftermath, a new covenant was forged between past and future, between disparate species and civilizations, between darkness and light.